Traumatic? What just happened?
Thank you for showing me the world. You know that you are my one and only girl. Got you in my ear saying, don't do me less to your head.
What's up, YouTube? It's your girl Jenny again. This is for part 2 of our video. We'll go ahead and get started. What happened? As with the 2 previous videos where I talked about, how I wanted to be there for Levi's pre-K 3. And so with that whole week, I started talking to my doctor about it, and she's like, yeah, that makes sense. Listen, the good thing is I'm also available that weekend. It's my on-call weekend, so it works out perfectly. And I'm like, okay, so she did the necessaries to get me on the schedule for that Friday the 28th, which I was super excited about because, again, she kept reassuring me that, things are going to go even better than it did with Levi. And Levi was basically your perfect textbook C-section kid. Like, everything was amazing. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do it, So I got scheduled. And as you saw from the previous video, all day long, I was starving. I was doing what I needed to do. Just resting and spending time with Levi because, again, I was going to come back home on Sunday because everything was going to go perfectly well. This is the time where it's like, where the saying, tell God your plans and he will laugh, could not ring any truer. Like, to take you guys back a little bit, like much little bit, okay? Back in June, when I kept hearing, during the height of COVID, when I kept hearing stories about Black women dying during childbirth. I remember when I went in May, my doctor was like, hey, I don't think Paul can come to the OR because, we are not accepting significant others. I freaked out and I froze. And she was like, well, let's not worry because that might change come June. I was like, okay. And lo and behold, come June, it did come to pass that they did start allowing families or significant others to be in the OR. So long story short, every time that I would have an appointment with my doctor, every month from May all the way to literally August, that week of August, I just kept telling her, I was like, please do not let me die. Please do not let me die. I know that might sound very dark for some, but because at the rate at which I was hearing that, Black women are dying while giving birth, or Black women, the stories that I was hearing, I was just like, oh my God, it's only a matter of time, right? So anyway, I said, and she was just like, listen, girl, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be great. Fast forward to that Tuesday before my Friday C-section appointment. I went for my last visit with her, and she was admiring my C-section scar. She's like, I did a good job. My doctor is very hip, very cool. Like, I love her. Nothing against her. Okay, she's literally the ideal doctor for someone like me. High energy. She feeds off mine. I feed off of hers. It's a key when we get together. So we get to Friday, as you saw in the next video. That day went on. And they kept switching things on me, which was fine. And so then once I was called to the OR around 9:39, 9:40-ish, finally, after starving all day, okay, we get to the OR, and my new anesthesiologist was just like so amazing. He, and I told him about my experience last time. He went through the whole process with me. He made sure that I was like good. The nurses that were there held my hands, and we did the epidural, and that's when I feel like things started going left. Not so much so because, I think it's because of my experience, like, oh my God, like, as soon as they gave me the epidural, so you feel a rush of tingling feeling in your legs, and your legs automatically go numb, which is great, whatever. It's what it's supposed to be doing. But then I started getting in my head when they started picking up my legs and, putting it on the table. And that's when I literally felt like the room.
That's how I do it. Picking up legs on tails. Tails.
Baby.
Okay.
So once that happened, and again, I witnessed it, last time I witnessed it, because it was my first time, I was just like, okay, whatever, this is weird. But this time, for some very odd reason, like, I started hyperventilating. The room started getting big, and I started feeling like, oh my God, I'm gonna vomit. So I kept telling my anesthesiologist, I'm gonna vomit, I'm gonna vomit. And he's just like, you're good, you're good. And he brings a bowl next to me. They call Paul in the room. Paul is like trying to calm me down and, you know, telling me it's gonna be okay. But then I was like, are my legs straight? I remember asking that question. And they're like, they look at me weird, like, yes, because again, the curtains still hadn't gone up yet. And I'm like, I feel like, I'm exposed. Like, I feel like my legs are not straight. And they're just like, no, they're pretty straight, because I felt like my legs were as big as the room. So anyway, so that went on. My doctor walks in, and, you know, they start going through their, you know, oh, we have Jenny here, going down the list of, she's here for a C-section, baby boy, all of that. And meanwhile, somebody is cleaning my stomach. So the cleaning of the stomach with, like, again, I don't know what they were cleaning it with, but they were like rubbing me down just to prepare to cut me open. So I'm like, okay, but like, as that's happening, the curtains go up. I'm like hyperventilating. I'm hyperventilating, and I'm just like, what is going on? I feel like I'm gonna vomit. And I'm just like, Jenny, breathe. And, you know, the anesthesiologist is telling me to breathe. Paul is massaging my shoulders, and I'm, you know, I'm trying to take it slow. And so, okay, great. Okay, we're ready. Everybody, you know, this is, I hear the screaming, not screaming, but I hear the doctors saying everything in place. Everybody, you know, knows their role or whatever. So then I have my doctor on my right side, and then the I guess assisting doctor on the left side. And so they're like, okay, Jenny, we're starting to cut you open. Can you feel? Nope, I can't. Great. This is exactly what we need to hear. So guys, they're talking COVID, how is homeschooling? Again, what you expect your doctors to be talking about during a C-section, and, or I guess during, you know, surgeries, period. And I'm like, oh, and you know, I'm participating. I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm like, y'all are tripping, talking like that. And while y'all cutting me open, please concentrate. You know, I'm joking with them. And basically, and I think I made a comment in my anesthesiologist that at the time says, oh, you want them to talk. You should start worrying when they're not talking and when they're not like dialoguing between each other, amongst each other. I go quiet and I'm like shaking, because that's, for some odd reason, that's how my body reacts to the epidural. I start shaking uncontrollably. I start feeling better, but I still feel like my legs are as big as like earth. So anyway, so they're talking, and my doctor makes a joke. She's like, oh my God, Jenny, do you do P90X? Because your muscles are so tight. Your you know, your abdomen muscles are so tight. And I'm just like, no, but I'll take like, you know, and again, this is the kind of relationship we have. You know, they start talking, and basically they're like, oh my, and what I hear my doctor say is, oh my God, he's a big boy. Oh my God, he's a big boy. And they're like, last time they said, you're gonna feel an elephant on your chest. But this time they're just like, you're gonna feel, I think the joke was like, two grown men or two grown people who drink like their chocolate milk or something on your chest. I'm like, okay. And then so I feel it, that, you guys, I lie to you not, I literally felt like all of my organs were at my throat, like literally ready to come out. And so as they're like pressing down on my chest and pulling baby boy out, I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? Like, I was like, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I don't feel good. And then just as I didn't feel good, baby boy comes out, and I'm like, okay, sigh of relief. I feel better now. Good, great. This is what we want. They're like, oh my God, he's such a big boy. He's such a big boy. Like all the comments and stuff like that. So they take him away as is custom. And he weighs 8 pounds, 10 ounces. And so I'm just like, thank God. I start crying, and I'm like emotional, and I'm like, you know, Paul is happy, I'm happy. It's you know, it's exciting. It's good. This is what we want. Except what followed afterwards. So then as soon as baby boy comes out with Levi came out. They brought, you know, him to us approximately like less than 5 minutes, to be honest with you guys. They cleaned him up, weighed him, took pictures, and then brought him to us. But with this one, It felt like an eternity. Mind you, they're like, birth time, 10:33 p.m. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, he's out, birth time is called, all of that. Like, that is seared in my brain. I'm like praising God in the moment. I'm crying. It's emotional. He's like screaming his lungs out. This is good. We want this. So then my doctor basically, like, things starts going quiet. And I'm just like, okay, cool. 10 minutes are rolling. To me, what felt like 10 minutes rolling by, 20 minutes rolling by, 30 minutes rolling by. Still no baby. Okay. So then they're not bringing baby to us, they're talking amongst themselves, but not like with the chipper, happy talk that they were doing before. But it was like, yeah, like, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm not sure what's happening. Like the placenta, the whatever. These are like the little tidbits that I'm hearing. Of course, I'm not in my right mind. I'm not putting things together. So going on, I'm like, Dr. Bajaj, is everything okay? Because like I said, it's feeling like forever and it is taking forever. So so she's like, yeah, everything is fine. Remember when I had you do a sono at 36 weeks? I'm like, sure, I remember. She's like, yeah, I remember, that's because your placenta was low. But again, we weren't concerned that your placenta was low because you weren't doing a vaginal birth. I'm like, yeah, so why are we concerned now? She's like, well, basically, what we're discovering is that your placenta is attached to the uterus. Come again? And she's like, yeah, you have what's called placenta accreta. First of all, I've never heard this term before. So placenta accreta, guys, is basically when your placenta is attached to the uterus. It grows into the uterus, so it becomes one, which is not supposed to happen because, again, once you give birth, the placenta is supposed to automatically come out. But no, my placenta is like, I'm sticking to her uterine wall. And so my doctor was like, this is strange, and, you know, this is not what we expected. And things starts looking really dark and grim. And so literally, I feel like an hour into it, 30 minutes into it, they bring the baby to us, but they didn't bring him to us. They're just like, oh, look, take pictures. By the way, he has jaundice, and he has, or severe jaundice, and he has a heart murmur, but don't worry, it happens to 60% of children. Picture, 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 smile. We're gonna take him away now. What? Okay, cool. They take him away. And so with Levi they automatically put Levi on my chest, and, you know, we were bonding and all that jazz. I'm like, okay, do what you got to do to take care of that murmur and that jaundice, then bring my baby back to me. So during this time, guys, my doctor and the assistant doctor is like, yeah, I don't know what's happening. I mean, like, guys, it was like, yeah, we're not sure. Why is he doing that? I knew I was in trouble when the assistant doctor said, I'm scraping, but it's not coming out. Jenny, you're bleeding severely, and you're hemorrhaging at this point. Okay, so what you're doing is hemorrhaging. What you're doing is shedding blood and bleeding all over the place. You don't even have blood. Keep in mind, guys, I'm anemic a little bit, just so I can see her. But she's like, we're just really trying to, you know, compress the uterus, because right now it's not compressing, and, you know, we just are trying as much as we can to scrape the placenta out of the uterus wall. Things went quiet, and then all of a sudden things picked back up again. And they're like, yeah, can you charge blah, blah, blah in case of flatline? Can you blah, 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 blah? And like nurses are running. And so Paul is telling me, as these things are happening, the doctor on my left is standing in a pool of blood, basically, literally, like, and he sees that Paul is seeing this. He calls the nurse over to cover the pool of blood. And so I'm just like, is everything okay? The straw that broke the camel's back for me is when things were so quiet after all of that brouhaha. My anesthesiologist said, hey guys, can you tell me what's going on? Because if I don't know what's going on back there, I can't do my job up here. Mind you, my doctor the anesthesiologist was literally like in the back of my head as I'm laying down. the doctors, I guess, signaled for him to come to the back of the curtain. He goes to the back of the curtain and basically comes back up and says, hey, I'm gonna have to add a third IV line for you. But the IV wasn't really IV because it looked like blood, but it was just pink. So I already had 2 IVs on me. And then they added the pink liquid for the last time. They're like, you're losing, he said, you're losing so much blood that we have to replace it as soon as possible because if we don't do that, it could be fatal or whatever. So then I'm just like, when I tell you this can't be live, this literally cannot be live. And so he does what he needs to do. Meanwhile, I'm laying like this in a sacrificial pose. They're like, Jenny, this is what we're gonna do right now. Because your uterus is not contracting the way you want it to contract, we're gonna put a balloon inside of your uterus to trick it into thinking you still have a baby inside of your uterus so that it can add pressure to your uterine wall so you can stop bleeding. We're gonna do this for 2 hours and we're gonna monitor your bleeding. If you keep bleeding, we're probably gonna have to do a hysterectomy. A histo what now? My doctor is very matter of fact. She doesn't mince words. She gets to the point. And so she's like, what we're trying to do right now, what we're trying to deal with right now is really saving your life. So as soon as she says that, I hear, let's call Virginia. And they call Virginia. She said, what Virginia's gonna do is insert this balloon inside of your vagage, inflate it, fill it up with water. Once you fill it up with water, attach some kind of like straw-like item to it that would allow the bleeding to come out. And so if the bleeding in the next 2 hours get to 500 milliliter, then we know the next step is to basically do a hysterectomy. The purpose of this balloon is, so the balloon is inside of me. My uterine wall, my uterus is basically contracting onto that balloon, like pressing against that balloon, and the balloon is pressing back against it, which is basically to stop the bleeding because pressure onto pressure will stop the bleeding. Cool. And so they're like, if your body doesn't react the way we want it to react with all of this cocktail that we're giving you, then we know to go to the next step. I walked in the OR at 9:40, walked out at 12:45-ish. Baby came out at 10:33. So from 10:33, or a little bit more than 10:33, I was open until literally 12:45. After everything was inserted inside of me and, you know, they were monitoring it, everything was done. I'm being wheeled out of the OR, and my doctor basically looks at me and says, well, the curtains come down, and I'm like, well, what the hell happened? And I mean, when I tell you, you see the fear of God in this woman's face, because again, I feel like all of the times that I kept telling her, hey, by the way, don't let me die, don't let me die, don't let me die, I feel like all of these started playing back in her head. Like, she was just like, Jenny, you scared the heck out of me. Like, this is not what we're meant to do. And, you know, I mean, for me, it's really like, oh my God, I'm thinking, again, I almost died, right? But I'm over here on this hospital bed thinking, one, I'm not going to be able to see Levi's first day because at this point, I'm like this close to ICU. I don't know what the next 2 hours are going to bring. I just don't know if I'm going to make it out of here alive, okay? Let's be very clear. She's like, the first order of business at this point is if in the next 2 hours you don't keep bleeding, that's a good sign. We will keep the balloon inside of you for the remainder of the weekend, and you need about 4 pints of blood, or 4 bags of blood. And so keep in mind, I'm already anemic, so I was already coming into the surgery with a disadvantage, and to hemorrhage on the hospital bed, on the OR bed, is just, as everything is done, I'm being cleaned up, I'm being closed up. I see bags and bags of like cloth, rags, items, whatever you want to call it, soaked with blood. I basically was just like, so doc, I I said, I know it's clear that I'm not going to make it to Levi's first day. That's one. But will I be able to carry my third child? Because that was like the question. I don't know why, because it's the first question I, wanted to ask, or that I blurted out. And literally she put her hand on my leg, or on my knee, and she says, how about we just enjoy those two boys that you have? And something inside of me just, like, I lost it. I'm being wheeled into not a regular, post-op room. I was on not the regular, like, postpartum room, but I was wheeled into a post-op where it's like the people that are in critical condition, they want them to remain close by in case anything happens. So for the next 2 hours, I get a whole bunch of nurses coming in, checking on me like, hey, we know you've just been through such a traumatic experience. Meanwhile, I'm like, traumatic? What just happened? By the time I get out of the OR onto the room, the bag that was capturing all the blood that was coming out of me was at 300 ml. And so literally they're like, for the next 2 hours, it needs to remain at 300 ml or else, like, whatever. So that night, the nurses are coming in and out. I mean, like, again, I'm being pumped with so many things. I'm just like loopy. I'm here, but not here. I'm in pain. I'm just like, where's my baby? Like, it's a very strange thing, like super strange. I get to, and as every nurse comes in, they're like they're checking. And so this one nurse comes in and she checks and she's like, oh, okay, it's increasing. I think it's about at 400. Paul just shot up. Paul's like, no, it's not. The bag is like slanted. Like, to see the fear of God in my husband's face, like this is bad. This is bad. So it's funny enough, as I'm in the room, I turn around and I ask, I was like, why do these people keep coming in and telling me, I've been through trauma, like what I've been through is like so, major. And Paul just like looks at me like, and laughs like this. He's like, you just don't know what you've been through, do you? And I'm like, I guess not. Mind you, I'm still in pain. I'm still like, whatever. So literally 2 hours rolls around. They come in, my doctor comes in. She's like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Like, she's chipper. She's happy that, things are looking good. I'm not bleeding anymore. She's like, that means the concoction that they put together, the balloon, everything else is working. So I'm like, okay, good. We want it to work. And so the morning rolls around, she comes in. So she basically is like, Jenny, I've never been so scared in my whole entire life. I've never, in my 20 years of, practicing, I've never seen anything like this before. There's no way that we could have figured this out. Like, this is bad, but it could have been worse. As the weekend went on, guys, as you can see in the previous video, I basically, was trying to, regain my strength back, trying to spend as much time with the baby as possible. Sunday, they're like, things are looking good. You're on the up and up. After I had, on Sunday, I had 2 blood transfusions. With that, they wanted to see, how my body was going to respond to it, because I'd never had blood transfusions before. They wanted to see how my body was going to respond to it, if my levels would go up on their own. And thankfully they did, because every 2 seconds somebody was poking me somewhere, trying to, see what my levels were at. And so by Saturday night, Sunday morning, my doctor had decided that I don't need any more blood transfusions, that they were just gonna, monitor me, and I was stable. So my doctor basically says, the balloon's out. You are now free to, be moved to the recovery room. What is left to do is just to monitor the baby, monitor me, and make sure that everything is going according to plan. She's like, I'm not going to send you home. Today is Sunday. I'm not going to send you home tomorrow. I want to wait for a full 24 hours to see how your body's going to react without the balloon and everything else, to make sure. Monday rolls around. I'm on the up and up some more. My levels are great. Everything is amazing. That is my birth story, y'all. It literally was one of the hardest things that I've ever been through. And I think I am mentally scarred to the point where I, you know, it was tough for me to even get in front of a camera, to be honest with you, because I'm just like, I'm still trying to make sense of it all. And I hope everything that I've said made sense. I'm still trying to make sense of it all, but it's tough because when you're reading, like, for example, when you get on Instagram and you look at the hashtag placenta accreta, when I hashtag placenta accreta, all of the things that I'm seeing is like placenta accreta survivors. I'm like, the opposite of surviving something is not surviving it. So for me to say that I'm grateful and thankful that God brought me through is an understatement. And the fact that I had those negative, you know, ideas in my head prior to even doing this, I was really nervous. I was really concerned. It's so funny because Paul was just telling me, because again, the things that I'm admiring about how great God is if how everything works really for your good. If Levi didn't have school on August 31st, my due date was supposed to be September 1st. If I didn't insist on getting put on the calendar earlier so that I could make it to Levi's first day, like, it could have been way worse. Like, in the words of my doctor, in those 5-day time span, the placenta could have grown even more into the uterus, making it even harder, making me bleed even more. So for that, I'm just so grateful, so thankful, because it literally could have been worse. With that in mind, guys, thank you for coming to the channel. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video. Au revoir.